गुड इवनिंग टू ऑल। अपनी वच्चे स्वर्णिम गुजरात स्पोर्ट्स यूनिवर्सिटीना वाइस चांसलर श्री प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर अर्जुन सिंह जी राणा साहेब उपस्थित है। तो हूँ मोस्ट सीनियर बास्केटबॉल कोच प्रकाश भाई पानखणिया ने विनंती करीश कि साहेब ने पुष्पगुच्छ आपी स्वागत करशे। थैंक यू सर। अपनी वच्चे खेड़ा डिस्ट्रिक्ट क्रिकेट एसोसिएशन प्रमुख श्री देसाई साहेब उपस्थित थया छे, तो एमनुं पण आपणे पुष्पगुच्छ आपी स्वागत करिए। निमेश पटेल सर ने विनंती करूँ कि एमने पुष्पगुच्छ आपी स्वागत करशे। तेमज अपने वच्चे उपस्थित अन्य महानुभाव दीप्तेश भाई ब्रह्मभट्ट एमने पण हूँ स्वागत करवा माटे सीनियर कोच महिसागर दक्षेश कहार सर ने विनंती करी। थैंक यू सर। हवे हूँ श्री अपना ओएसडी श्री राणा साहब ने विनंती करीश कि प्रसंग अनुरूप उद्बोधन करशे।
नमस्कार, प्रणाम, वंदनम। या देवी सर्वभूतेषु शक्तिरूपेण संस्थिता नमस्तस्यै 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 नमो नमः। आज इस सेमिनार में उपस्थित हमारे स्पोर्ट्स साइंटिस्ट डॉक्टर ओलेक, मिस्टर दीपक जी, आज के हमारे मेहमान माननीय श्री मनीष देसाई जी, दीप्तेश ब्रह्मभट्ट जी और यहाँ पे उपस्थित हमारे कोचेस, हमारे ट्रेनर्स, हमारे फिजियोज और स्पोर्ट्स अथॉरिटी ऑफ गुजरात के परिवार के एक एक सभ्यों का, और स्वर्णिम गुजरात स्पोर्ट्स यूनिवर्सिटी के हमारे प्रोफेसर कुणाल देसाई जी, यजवेंद्र जेठवा जी, निमिष पटेल जी, जो हमारी टीम के एक मेंबर है कि हमें कोई भी आयोजन करना है तो हमें कंधे से कंधा मिला के वो हमें सहकार देते हैं। वैसे हमारे मनसुख जी, सभी को डॉक्टर अर्जुन सिंह राणा का नतमस्तक वंदन। आज कोरोना की इस महामारी के बाद हम सब एक मंच पर उपस्थित रहे। Like we all are on one platform after this corona pandemic. So this is the first time we are meeting after 3 years. And thanks to you all that we all have organized the ELMS and Swarnim Gujarat Sports University and Sports Authority of Gujarat, they have organized such kind of seminar for 2 days just to upgrade the knowledge in a scientific way. तो हम लोग हमारे स्पोर्ट्स कोचेस के लिए, फिजियोज के लिए, ट्रेनर्स के लिए एक ऐसा कार्यक्रम लेके लॉन्ग टर्म एथलीट डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम टूवर्ड द हाई परफॉर्मेंस, हमारे खिलाड़ियों का परफॉर्मेंस, जो उनका अभी का परफॉर्मेंस है उसको बढ़ा के, जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल प्लेयर्स है उनको स्टेट लेवल बनाने के लिए, स्टेट लेवल प्लेयर्स को नेशनल लेवल प्लेयर बनाने के लिए और नेशनल से इंटरनेशनल और ओलंपिक तक पहुंचाने के लिए हमारे प्रधानमंत्री परम श्रद्धेय नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने जो संकल्पना की, उसी संकल्पना को साकार करने के लिए हमारे गुजरात के यशस्वी मुख्यमंत्री माननीय श्री भूपेंद्र भाई पटेल जी के नेतृत्व में, हमारे यंग एनर्जेटिक डायनामिक स्पोर्ट्स मिनिस्टर माननीय श्री हर्षभाई संघवी जी के मार्गदर्शन में और हमारे स्पोर्ट्स डिपार्टमेंट के प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी माननीय श्री अश्विनी कुमार जी IAS और हमारे स्पोर्ट्स अथॉरिटी ऑफ गुजरात के सचिव सेक्रेटरी माननीय श्री ऋषिन भट्ट जी, उनके एक टीम के मार्गदर्शन के साथ हम सभी कोचेस सभी डिस्ट्रिक्ट से यहाँ पे आज इकट्ठा हुए, सभी फिजियोज इकट्ठा हुए, सभी ट्रेनर्स यहाँ पे उपस्थित है। आप सभी को स्वर्णिम गुजरात स्पोर्ट्स यूनिवर्सिटी, स्पोर्ट्स डिपार्टमेंट, स्पोर्ट्स अथॉरिटी ऑफ गुजरात और ELMS की ओर से मैं आपका हृदयपूर्वक स्वागत करता हूँ। आज 2 दिन के इस वर्कशॉप के अंदर अलग अलग टॉपिक के ऊपर पर्सनालिटी डेवलपमेंट है, स्पोर्ट्स साइकोलॉजी है, ट्रेनिंग है, लीडरशिप क्वालिटीज़ कैसे इंप्रूव करनी है, अपना नॉलेज। एवरी डे इज़ अ लर्निंग डे फॉर अस, आप लोगों के लिए, हमारे लिए भी। तो उसका ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म हमें देने के लिए आज ELMS ने पूरा प्रयत्न करके एक इंटरनेशनल स्पोर्ट्स साइंटिस्ट डॉक्टर ओलेग को यहाँ पे उपस्थित किया है। तो yesterday मैं बात कर रहा था ओलेग के साथ। yesterday I was discussing with you regarding the research work in the field of sports by our coaches and trainers and physios, because I am also a sports scientist, so that I can explain in a better way that कि हम सभी कोचेस को हमारी जिम्मेवारी तो अच्छे से हम लोग निभा ही रहे हैं। और अभी तो आपका नामकरण भी गवर्नमेंट ने कर दिया है ऑफिशियली, आप लोग डिस्ट्रिक्ट स्पोर्ट्स डेवलपमेंट ऑफिसर के नाम से जाने जाते हो। और मैंने देखा, मुझे इतनी खुशी हुई कि मनसुख भाई ने तो यहाँ पे DSDO का बोर्ड भी लगा दिया है, तो उसके लिए भी एक अलग से पार्टी हो जाएगी हमारी चाय कॉफ़ी की। मगर इतना पॉजिटिव अभी का जो माहौल है, मैं क्या बताऊँ आपको। हर्ष भाई है हमारी टीम के लीडर, अश्विनी कुमार जी है, भट्ट साहब है, माई सेल्फ, मी आई एम ऑल्सो कंट्रीब्यूटिंग, छोटा मोटा मैं भी कुछ इसमें योगदान दे रहा हूँ, बिकॉज हम भी स्पोर्ट्समैन हैं। और एक स्पोर्ट्समैन को नहीं जानेगा तो किसको जानेगा। आप बताइए हमें, आपकी जो भी समस्या है, पेंडिंग समस्या भी है, हमें मालूम है कि 29-30 लोगों की पेंडिंग समस्या अभी बाकी चल रही है, उसके ऊपर भी सरकार विचार कर रही है। दे ऑल आर वेरी पॉजिटिव, और डिपार्टमेंट इज़ पॉजिटिव। जो पिछले 2 सालों के अंदर कोरोना की महामारी आई, और कोरोना जैसे ही लोग भी हमें कुछ मिले थे, आप सभी को मालूम है, वैसे माहौल में से हम बाहर आए, पेंडेमिक सिचुएशन में से। मगर इट्स ए न्यू इंडिया, न्यू गुजरात एंड न्यू स्पोर्ट्स डिपार्टमेंट, इतना ही मैं आपको बोलूँगा। और एक एक प्रोग्राम, एक एक हम लोग पूरे साल ऐसे प्रोग्राम्स चलाएंगे, आप सभी को इनवाइट करेंगे। और आप लोग यहाँ पे हमारे स्पोर्ट्स के माध्यम से, क्रीड़ा के द्वारा चारित्र का विकास कैसे हो, और चारित्र के द्वारा हमारा राष्ट्र का निर्माण कैसे हो। हमें हमारे खिलाड़ियों को चारित्रवान, बलवान और राष्ट्रवादी बनाना है, क्योंकि हमारा सबका दायरा स्पोर्ट्स का है। हम कोई पॉलिटिक्स के लोग नहीं हैं, हम तो स्पोर्ट्समैन हैं। तो स्पोर्ट्स के माध्यम से हम लोग एक राष्ट्र श्रेष्ठ राष्ट्र बनाने के लिए कैसे संकल्पना करें, उसके लिए आप हर एक ज़िले के अंदर, हर एक आपके तालुका के अंदर ऐसे स्पोर्ट्स के प्रोग्राम चलाए, एकेडमिक प्रोग्राम भी आप चलाए, जिसके अंदर आप खिलाड़ियों को, प्लेयर्स को, बेटे बेटियों को एक अच्छा चारित्र निर्माण कैसे हो स्पोर्ट्स के माध्यम से, स्पोर्ट्समैन स्पिरिट की भावना कैसे डेवलप हो, अनुशासन में कैसे रहा जाए। क्योंकि अनुशासन के रहने के लिए हम सभी को आत्मचिंतन करने की ज़रूरत है। हर एक चीज़ के अंदर अनुशासन बहुत ज़रूरी है। हाथी इतना बड़ा प्राणी है, उसके ऊपर भी हमें कभी कभी अंकुश लगाना पड़ता है, तो वैसा अंकुश अपने विद्यार्थियों के ऊपर हमें कभी कभी लगाना भी पड़ता है, खिलाड़ियों के ऊपर भी लगाना पड़ता है, चाहे वो नेशनल इंटरनेशनल खिलाड़ी क्यों ना हो। इसलिए आप इनके साथ कैरेक्टर बिल्डिंग के लिए भी काम करें स्पोर्ट्स के माध्यम से। आपको जितनी भी जिम्मेवारी स्पोर्ट्स की सौंपी गई है उसको आप अच्छे से निभा ही रहे हो, मगर और फैसिलिटीज़ गवर्नमेंट आपको, हमारा डिपार्टमेंट प्रोवाइड करेगा। और जितना हो सके उतना आपके सभी सेंटर्स के अंदर जो भी आपकी ज़रूरत है, स्पोर्ट्स नेसेसिटी है, क्योंकि हमें हमारे स्पोर्ट्स मिनिस्टर साहब ने प्रॉमिस किया है कि जितनी भी जिम्मेदारी इन लोगों को आपने दी है उसके लिए जो भी फैसिलिटीज़ चाहिए वो हम प्रदान करेंगे। तो अभी आप इस मौके का फ़ायदा उठाइए, टेक द अपॉर्चुनिटी, ग्रैब द अपॉर्चुनिटी, डू समथिंग। कुछ क्रिएटिव इनोवेटिव आप कोचिंग के उपरांत हमें प्रदान करें, और कुछ रिसर्च वर्क अपनी अपनी गेम में आप ऐसा करें कि फिज़िकल फिटनेस का अगर आप उसके अंदर टेस्ट लेना चाहते हो, फिज़िकल फिटनेस के जितने भी पैरामीटर्स है, स्पीड, स्ट्रेंथ, एजिलिटी, मोबिलिटी, एंड्योरेंस, प्लस उस गेम की स्किल, तो उसके लिए आप कुछ कंट्रीब्यूट करें। यस्टरडे मैं बात कर रहा था ओलेग से और दीपक जी से कि ELMS आपको इतना अच्छा प्लेटफॉर्म दे रहा है सभी को, तो अलग अलग स्पोर्ट्स साइंटिस्ट, न्यूट्रिशनिस्ट, हमारी 2 बहनें न्यूट्रिशनिस्ट यहाँ बैठी हुई है, तो एक एक खिलाड़ी का, कोच का, सबका ध्यान रखती है, खाना भी अच्छे से खिलाती है, प्रोटीन वाला खाना कैसे खाई जाए, न्यूट्रिएंट डाइट, हेल्दी डाइट कैसे लिया जाए। अभी हमें मनीष जी लेके चले थे, आयुर्वेदिक हॉस्पिटल है यहाँ पे, आयुर्वेदिक कॉलेज है जो भारत की नंबर 1 कॉलेज है, और नडियाद के अंदर वो नंबर 1 कॉलेज अभी एक डीम्ड यूनिवर्सिटी के रूप में रूपांतरित होने जा रही है। आयुष मंत्रालय हमारे मनसुख मांडविया साहब ने भी हमें बताया था कि एक बार आप नडियाद जाए तो ज़रूर जाएंगे। तो मनीष जी और दीप्तेश जी हमें वहाँ लेके चले थे। हम तो हमारे लिए पंचकर्म के लिए कुछ ज्ञान लेने के लिए निकले थे, क्योंकि हमें तो पूरे 33 जिलों में घूमना पड़ता है, कहीं कहीं पानी पीना पड़ता है, कहीं कहीं खाना खाना पड़ता है। मगर हम प्योर वेजिटेरियन हूँ मैं तो, मगर मुझे पंचकर्म का थोड़ा नॉलेज कम था, तो उसके लिए हमें वहाँ डॉक्टर पटेल साहब मिले, उन्होंने सब बताया। तभी ऐसे ही आकस्मिक बात चली, तो डॉक्टर ओलेक वी आर गोइंग टू लुक फॉरवर्ड for the research work regarding to the Ayurveda and sports. So allopathy is a part of that, but what is Ayurveda and what is the role of Ayurveda in the field of sports, and how Ayurveda is useful in the field of sports for the performance enhancement. परफॉर्मेंस एनहांसमेंट करने के लिए, क्योंकि मैं तो क्रिकेट में इतने साल 24-25 साल रहा हूँ, नेशनल इंटरनेशनल टीम के साथ इतना ट्रैवल किया है। तो हमारे विराट कोहली जी अभी ब्लैक वाटर पी रहे हैं, मेरे लिए भी 2 कार्टून ब्लैक वाटर के वो कंपनी वाले आके दे गए थे, मगर मैंने अभी तक पिया नहीं है, वो रखा है, क्योंकि उसमें 70 मिनरल्स आ रहे हैं। तो अब जितने हमारे रोल मॉडल हैं, वो रोल मॉडल कुछ न कुछ करेंगे, तो उसको फॉलो हमारे जूनियर जरूर करेंगे। तो हमारे जितने भी कोचेस यहाँ पे विराजमान हैं, वो सभी हमारे प्लेयर्स के रोल मॉडल हो आप लोग। तो आप लोग जो भी करोगे वो आपको आने वाली पीढ़ी, अपने खिलाड़ी लोग वही करेंगे आपके लिए, आपको देख के। तो हमें आयुर्वेदा के माध्यम से सनातन भारत के अंदर आयुर्वेदा का क्या रोल था, और खेल कूद तो प्राचीन परंपरा से आ रहा है, हमारे भारत के परंपरा रही है। तो खेल कूद के अंदर, क्रीड़ा के अंदर हमें कैसे आयुर्वेदा का रोल उसमें इंट्रोड्यूस करना है। हमें प्रोटीन पाउडर जो बाहर से 5-5, 10-10 हज़ार के जो सिंथेटिक प्रोटीन पाउडर मिल रहे हैं, उसका सेवन नहीं करने देना है बच्चों को। ड्रग्स फ्री हमें बनाना है बच्चों को, क्योंकि मुझे कई चीज़ें मालूम पड़ी है, क्योंकि इतना मैं ट्रैवल किया। मैंने क्रिकेट में ऐसा नहीं देखा था, क्योंकि मैं एंटी डोपिंग का भी काम करता हूँ, वाडा के साथ भी जुड़ा हुआ हूँ, नाडा का भी मेंबर हूँ, इसलिए वाडा इज़ ए पूरे वर्ल्ड का जो एंटी डोपिंग एजेंसी है वो। और क्रिकेट में तो आपको मालूम है सर कि हम लोग यूरिन सैंपल लेते हैं, ब्लड सैंपल की ज़रूरत पड़ती है तो भी लेते हैं, मगर वहाँ पे केसेस आर वेरी रेयर। एक्सप्लोजिव स्ट्रेंथ के लिए जो काम होता है, उसके लिए ये लोग एथलीट लोग भी लेते हैं, हमारे प्लेयर्स जो है वो। कितने प्रकार के ड्रग्स है, एक टॉपिक उसका भी हमने दीपक जी से चर्चा की थी कि वी विल ऑर्गेनाइज वन वर्कशॉप फॉर द एंटी डोपिंग ऑल्सो, सेम एज वी विल ऑर्गेनाइज द वर्कशॉप फॉर द एंटी करप्शन ऑल्सो। दैट्स वॉट वी वर डूइंग इन द क्रिकेट। तो वो एंटी करप्शन का नाम लेके ऐसा मत समझना कि पैसे की बात है, बिकॉज हमें मालूम है कि जितने इंटरनेशनल प्लेयर्स होते हैं उसके लिए हनी ट्रैप होती है। तो उस हनी ट्रैप के अंदर हमारे खिलाड़ी मेल हो या फीमेल हो न फंसे, और उस हनी ट्रैप के अंदर हमारे कोचेस भी न फंसे। वैसे हम आपको एक अपील करते हैं, उसके लिए भी एक सेमिनार ज़रूर किया जाएगा। थोड़े दिन पहले हमने वीडियो के माध्यम से, हमारी वीडियो कॉन्फ्रेंस के माध्यम से मैंने और भट्ट साहब ने एक सेशन आप लोगों का लिया था, जो कि सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट का था। तो वो सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट की कैसेट, उसका जो टिप्स है, उसके क्या रूल्स है, जो निर्भया हत्याकांड के बाद हमारे केंद्र सरकार ने प्रदर्शित किया है, उसको भी आप एक एक हमारे क्लब तक, एक एक टीम तक पहुंचाए, एक संदेश दे दीजिए। हमारा संदेश देना हमारा काम है, और उसके ऊपर इम्प्लीमेंट करना हमारी जिम्मेवारी है। तो एक नया भारत, एक अखंड भारत का निर्माण करने के लिए स्पोर्ट्स के माध्यम से आप लोग आगे आए। हम सभी को आप जितना सहकार देते हो, इससे डबल सहकार दीजिए। आप लोगों की सभी जो भी डिमांड्स है, जो भी नीड एंड नेसेसिटी है, उसका ध्यान गवर्नमेंट बहुत अच्छे से रखेगी, हमारा स्पोर्ट्स डिपार्टमेंट बहुत अच्छे से रखेगी, ये इसका मैं आपको वचन देता हूँ। और आने वाले दिनों में कुछ रिसर्च पेपर तैयार कीजिए कि अपनी अपनी टीम के, उसके लिए भी अगर आपको रिसर्च की ग्रांट्स चाहिए तो स्वर्णिम गुजरात स्पोर्ट्स यूनिवर्सिटी की ओर से मैं ऐलान करता हूं कि हर एक कोचिज़ को एक, आप 4-5 कोचिज़, दीपक जी ने बहुत अच्छी बात कही थी कि 4-5 कोचिज़ एथलेटिक्स के तो इकट्ठा हो जाए, और 4-5 आप एथलीट के ऊपर, जेवलिन थ्रोअर है, स्प्रिंटर है, जंपर है, कोई भी है, उसके ऊपर आप एक केस स्टडी करें, या उसके ऊपर आप एक एक्सपेरिमेंटल स्टडी करें, एक कंट्रोल ग्रुप, एक एक्सपेरिमेंटल ग्रुप, तो आप उसका सैंपलिंग करें और एक अच्छा सा निष्कर्ष निकालें कि ये ट्रेनिंग करने से ये पैरामीटर हम लोग इम्प्रूव कर सकते हैं। ये ट्रेनिंग, आपकी दी हुई ट्रेनिंग करने से, योगा है और एक्सरसाइज फिजियोलॉजी है, उसके माध्यम से आप लोग परफॉर्मेंस एनहांसमेंट के लिए काम कर सकते हैं। और अगर आप कुछ अच्छा नया संशोधन लेके बाहर आएंगे तो उसको हम लोग एक जर्नल फॉर्म में स्पोर्ट्स अथॉरिटी ऑफ गुजरात की एक जर्नल भी पब्लिश करेंगे, जो अभी तक मेरे ख्याल से पब्लिश हुई नहीं है, तो उसकी भी एक शुभ शुरुआत हो जाएगी। तो ऐसे क्रिएटिव एकेडमिक विचार भी आप, कोचिंग इज़ ए पार्ट ऑफ टीचिंग ऑल्सो, तो उस हिसाब से आप थोड़ा उसमें भी योगदान दीजिए और अच्छे से निष्ठा से कार्य कर रहे और अच्छे से कार्य कीजिए। आप सभी को बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। और कभी भी, मैं स्पोर्ट्समैन हूं, मैं कोई अधिकारी नहीं हूं, मैं आपके जैसा ही स्पोर्ट्समैन हूं। एक विशेष जिम्मेवारी मुझे वाइस चांसलर के अलावा दी गई है, फिट इंडिया मूवमेंट का ब्रांड एम्बेसडर होने के नाते। 33 जिला, 252 तालुका और 18,000 गाँवों के मुझे 3 साल में घूमना था, मगर मैं, डॉक्टर कुणाल देसाई, जेठवा जी, निमेश जी, हम लोग इस 2.5 साल के अंदर 5,691 5,691 विलेजेस ऑन पेपर ऑफिशियली वहाँ पे फिट इंडिया का प्रोग्राम करके आए हैं, जहाँ पे हमने साइकिलिंग की, मैराथन की, एरोबिक्स डांसिंग किया, जुम्बा किया। कच्छ से लेके हम लोग पूरे गुजरात में घूमे। अभी नेक्स्ट प्रोग्राम हमारा मांगरोल के अंदर है, जूनागढ़ के पास। उसके बाद हमारा सुरेंद्र नगर में, झालावाड़ में, वहाँ भी इतने पछात, मीन्स कि बैकवर्ड एरिया ज़्यादा है, वहाँ फिट इंडिया मूवमेंट का किसी को आइडिया भी नहीं है कि हम लोग फिजिकली कैसे फिट रहे, मेंटली कैसे स्ट्रांग रहे, सात्विक आहार कैसे करें, न्यूट्रिएंट डाइट बच्चों को कैसे खिलाए। और हम गवर्नमेंट स्कूल के साथ ही कर रहे हैं पूरा कार्यक्रम, ताकि गवर्नमेंट स्कूल में पढ़ने वाले बच्चों को भी उसका मार्गदर्शन बचपन से मिले। तो हम लोग आने वाले दिनों में एक साथ काम करेंगे। मुझे उम्मीद है कि हर एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट के अंदर आपने जितना हमें सहकार और सहयोग दिया है, इतना मान सम्मान दिया है, इसके लिए हम आपके आभारी और ऋणी हैं। मेरी वाणी को विराम देते हुए आप सभी को जय जय गरवी गुजरात, भारत माता की जय, वंदे मातरम।
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We are back with this session, and thank you very much, Professor VC, for the encouraging words, and that keeps us all kind of flying high. And we are back to our kind of ground realities. What we were doing in the first and second session, we were kind of browsing through the history, through various models which emerged in various countries, long-term at least development. Then we were browsing through, a bit of criticizing, of course, the recent and the most popular model, which is of Canada. Although Canadians keep producing good models, they're theoretically solid, sound. This session, however, is likely to be a bit of a, critical appraisal of what the theories deliver to us and what are the ground realities which we are facing. And that's the reason why I requested all of you to pay some attention, to make some notes during the previous session, to actually try visualizing yourself in that longitudinal thing, long-term development program. Where are you? Where are you with your athletes? How you survive through that? Is that mentioned in the theory and in the model realistically fitting into where you are? And the next thing, of course, is that we are likely to take a bit of a lust out of the theories and make it a bit practical. And yeah, it's written in there in red, not very much obvious, evidence, right? We have started the morning today with the point that I will take liberty to reiterate a bit, because this one way is a summary of today. That one of the points which we've started with was that in sports science, ideas and discoveries are not done by scientists. It sounds funny, but it is that way. It is done in the head of coaches. It is happening in their head, and then scientists, friendly or not very friendly, approaching them and say, we have to check that hypothesis. And say, okay, let's try check. And then science comes into picture quite often, and then particularly the ideas on training methodology, particularly the ideas on coaching, they originate in our coaches. And then scientists at some point step in and make it solid, theoretical, sound, and say, okay, now you can use it. You're using it anyway, you're using it good. So evidence is something which actually proves that your theories are right and what you are doing is right, with a theory, without the theory. And that's another reason why we are completing a day today checking how it is back to earth after examining the theories, which sometimes are in a way away from the reality of life. That's why I'm saying back to earth and to the realities of life. That's what we are doing now and concluding. So my request to you again is that based on what we've discussed in the previous session, and say, okay, the theory, and now when we will walk with you through this one, I would like you tomorrow morning, make sure that you see where you are, and even I would love to hear something from you guys in the tomorrow's morning session. So please think about it, territorially or by sport, it's up to you. I would like to hear, say, someone from Nadiad, and then someone from Himatnagar if you are here, or someone from Devgatbaria or from elsewhere, just expressing your views about today. All right. The model which we were discussing, particularly in the previous session, the Canadian one of the Valley, with 9 stages, with everything discussed, explained, objectives, okay, fine. Now, the one point which was and still is disappointing to me, and I was sharing it with you, that only at stage 7 or 8, at the age of 23 plus, we suddenly bump into, okay, world-class performance, and then world level, Olympics and something, 23 plus. And my simple question to you was and still is it the first time we kind of realistically face that high performance, and then what we are doing before that? From the age of 7, 6, 8, 9, whatever the sport is, and up to 23, we are just getting ready to perform that one thing. Obviously something is missing. So what is that missing? Simple things are missing. Since 2010, Youth Olympics are there. All right? And Youth Olympics are not the only sports which are requiring high performance at the early age. Youth Olympics, over 200 countries and 3,006 athletes participated in inaugural 2010 Youth Olympics in Singapore. If I'm not mistaken, it was there. Age, depending on sports, and in different sports the age is different, it's kind of 14 to 18 years of age, set by sports international associations. Examples, gymnastics 15 to 16, rowing 17 to 18. Each sports are at their own kind of age bracket. So obviously, someone has to perform there. And it is a prestigious competition. Of course, it is not as prestigious as Olympics are or the kind of senior competitions, but still it is. And each and every country will do their or level best to actually field someone there, and not just field, but then to get as many medals as possible, isn't it? So 2018, before COVID, Youth Olympics were supposed to happen in Buenos Aires. I am sure they did happen, but then later the situation was actually disturbed very much by COVID. And then there are other major competitions, international and national, which athletes have to perform before they reach that sort of assumable optimum age of top performance at 23 plus. And that assumable age of top performance was the one which we were also discussing in the morning. So, International Children's Game, multi-sports competition involving young athletes aged between 12 to 15. Yeah, example is here, 10th Asian School Games, Malaysia 2018, place I am now, right? So, I mean, stationed now. Then, School Games, Asian, 13 to 18 years of age. Commonwealth Youth Games, it's a kind of new development, reasonably new, 14 to 18 years of age from 71 Commonwealth countries. And I'm sure you are aware of the fact that Commonwealth Games are second largest international multi-sport games after Olympics. Bigger than Asian Games, bigger than many others. So now we have Youth Commonwealth Games. And obviously it is placed somewhere in the international calendar, and obviously there will be participants. And obviously they will be as young as 14 years of age. So where is that whole stuff in the holistic previously discussed model? It is obviously not there. But it is obviously a reality which we are facing. And you are facing that reality as coaches. And your administrators and Sports Authority of Gujarat and everyone else and whoever and other authorities will be actually asking you to perform and to do your level best actually when you reach there. Right? So that is how the other competitions like Commonwealth Games, as I say, age group continental championships, they are there. And there will be athletes performing. And those athletes are your trainees, right? You are the ones who actually coach them. Bangalore, India, example of 10th Asian Age Group Championships 2019. Although the championships also featuring water polo, diving, and synchronized swimming is described as junior, it includes senior swimmers too with an open category for 18 years and above. But most of them, of course, will be kind of a younger age. And then separate top age group bracket is 15 to 17 and 14 years below. Interestingly, and I know we have swimming coaches here, all right? Please raise your hands, swimming coaches. All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. You know for sure, and you know more than anyone else that how many medals, if you remember, were won here in these competitions by India in age group? If you remember the number roughly? Give me the number. I mean, come on, take it easy. If you remember, if you don't, I'm okay with that. What would be, okay, the guess, educated guess? 32. Good number. Any bigger number? No. 32, okay? If I'm not mistaken, Indian contingent won 64. I mean, they were close. 32, 64, just a bit, okay? Now, so 64 medals in various age group competitions, right? Nationals, gold medals, and then so on and so forth. Now then, it's a huge achievement. Congratulations to swimming community, absolutely. But then, the next question, which usually is asked, where are all those medals at the senior level? They are not there, unfortunately. Although again, improvement is going on, things are happening and competitions are there and so, but at some point we are losing all those medalists to, we've been discussing that already, to education, to job opportunities, to some other stuff and so on and so forth. However, see, if that is happening at the age group, then it is supposed to be a certain percentage at least who actually survive further, all right, and kind of go into the senior division. That percentage may not be very high, that percentage will not be kind of perhaps like, okay, too high or something, but at least there's supposed to be some people who actually go in the top performance. So then the question is, if it is not happening, of course there will be certain reasons of why it is not happening. Some of them again will be social, some of them will be like training methodology, some of them surprisingly or not will be in strength and conditioning, and that was the good question by the coach, like when, why, we will address that in a while. Why is it not happening? Because swimming is a completely different sport if you compare it with any other game or sport which is happening on earth. Swimming is happening in the water, and water is a completely different environment, and basic physics doesn't work in the water. It becomes like hydrodynamics and other things, and those are not negotiable. I was giving that example some time ago to some of my colleagues and say, okay, your body surface increases a bit, you're getting bigger in size, you're getting a bit taller or something, you're in big trouble because water is not air. And then power has to be increased, and then so like the drag increases, and then the increase in drag and increase in hydrodynamic forces requires not double, not triple, but square increase in power. To beat that, you need to go through incomparable increase in strength and conditioning, be it general and specific and so on and so forth. So back to the point. Even if we agree, which is difficult to accept, that okay, there is no conversion from junior medals into senior medals, this is still an achievement. And we have to, I repeat, acknowledge that and agree with that. So, at certain age, there are world beaters, Asian champions, world champions, and so on and so forth. So how do we actually put these whole things together? Age group competitions, and then eventually the top performance at the age which is 20 plus. How do we walk that walk? And that is why that the next part of our discussion is how do we move athletes from one phase to another? Is it realistically a safe journey? Is it kind of something we do casually, something we kind of go through or walk through, or we struggle? And is that model which we were discussing like about an hour or something ago, is it realistically practical? So let's have a look how practical it is. I specifically kept that slide. It was, it can be shown at any point of that presentation. It actually shows the adjustability in that long-term athlete development, which has been actually helping young kids to get into sports, and that is particularly from tennis. So see the variety of balls and variety of rackets to actually adjust to the physical size, stature, and motor abilities of the players. For instance, like a red ball, all right? How is it like done? It's actually done to give a bounce of about 85 to 105 centimeters. Why so? Because the height of the kid has to be actually considered. If the height is roughly under 115, obviously that kid cannot play with the same racket and cannot play with the same ball. However, adjusted to the physical size of the child, that helps to actually master the originally correct mechanics and biomechanics and kinesiology of the movement, which is primary important. Footwork, approach, this way, that way. So the full coordination swing, full coordination hit can be reproduced. And then you actually may need to adjust accordingly when the kid grows and when it goes into the next level and the next physicality, like say 8 years old, 127 will be height. The orange ball gives you a bounce of 115, 120, which again does not disturb the kinematics and it does not disturb biomechanics of the movement. So you can still kind of learn and then teach the whole kind of complex of movements in the best possible manner. Going further into green ball, 120, 135 bounce, with the height of about 138 up to 140, that will produce you and kind of provide you with the proper bounce, with the proper kind of training and mechanics, and there will be a progression from a younger age to the older one and eventually to an adult of 19 years of age, like about 170 centimeters in height. However, of course, it still has to be taller than that, because like if you check the top 10 of male tennis players, most of them will be 6'3", 6'5", which is like 190. However, the standard or an original ball will be giving you a bounce of about 135 to 147, something which you have to deal with. So that is again average height of males and females combined World Health Organization. Rebound height specifications of ITF approved tennis balls in 2011. So that is one of the approaches which actually can help you guys organizing your practice, provided you communicate it to your administrators, provided you communicate it to your higher authorities. If not directly to them, you can actually communicate it through us, through me, through Deepak, so then we will try to kind of arrange your kind of wish list into some sort of black and white form and shape, and then we can perhaps discuss those issues with Sport Authority of Gujarat. Now, how realistic those things are. Now let's get back into numbers, into figures. The one slide which I was sharing with you before, year 1, year 2, year 3, and so on and so forth. So if we try quantifying that long-term development model, all right, and if we just kind of look at it even from the point of view of that Canadian model or the one which I am about to share with you now, we will see that even from, say, the day 1 or day 2 in the academy, for instance, when you join roughly about here at year 3, there's supposed to be a progression in training volumes. Because if there is no progression, if you keep repeating the same amount of training loads like week into week, month into month, and year into year, you are likely to hit a stagnation point at some point in time. I'm not saying that there are no ways out of the situation. Of course, you can still improve on intensity, you can still improve on density, and so many other factors. However, in a way, we are creating our own stagnation point if we do not kind of keep the progression. So what do we have here? Sessions per week, hours per week, all those figures are here. Hours or training weeks per year and training hours per year. All right? So this will be training weeks per year, and that would be training hours per year. So we are, how we do that as a different story. We have to ensure that there is progression in those numbers. Because if there are no progressions, what is happening? After 2 years of state level coaching, we actually have athletes joining sort of to the academy from the LSS or from other sources. And that is exactly when the first challenge happens. It actually happens right about here, so that we are quite often failing to produce that proper progression. And then the next thing which is to be addressed, and the next thing which we actually have to face when those athletes are joining, is talent selection. Or, to be exact or correct, it is more to be kind of termed as talent confirmation. And then the more important question is coming: how do we do that? And of course we will address that in today or tomorrow's presentation. Now, the first question on joining the academy, as I've mentioned, will be, of course, age. The second question, of course, will be talent selection. Importantly, however, we need to also address one issue: transition from younger kind of stages or younger age group to the older age group. Imagine that you are inviting and encouraging kids to join the academy at the age of under 14, all right? So this is the kind of age groups of SGFI, typical under 14, under 17, under 19. Now, imagine that you encouraged or invited athletes to join in under 14 category. Typically, right, we are not now talking about talent identification. So, for instance, they are joining, and they are joining at the peak of under 14 age group. So they are, okay, 14. And they are delivering at the age of 14, SGFI, whatever other competitions, they are medal winners, and so on and so forth. Now, what happens with them next? When they become 15, right, they are obviously getting out of under 14 groups into what? Under 17. Now, the simple question comes, and this is an example of as the situation which actually weight categorized sports are facing, like boxing and judo. We have both here, boxing, judo. Okay, all right. So, the thing is that if you pay attention to the weight categories, from under 14, which are as low as 28, 30, and 32, and so on and so forth, when your athletes are changing the age category, all those lightweighters are basically gone. They will not be permitted to participate in competitions until they are fitting into some sort of this weight category, which is under 46. So everyone who is of a small frame, everyone who is light, and you know it's very difficult to actually put on weight on the small frame kid. Our nutritionists are knowing that like pretty well on weight categorized sports. So it's really a huge challenge. So then you start asking yourself a question. Fine, is it that bad that I need someone to kind of let go? Or I have to still kind of preserve that kid? Because see, he or she was a champion in under 14. And the mind is the mind of a champion. But the body is kind of in trouble because that body will not be allowed to participate. Same thing is happening in judo. Okay, that was in boxing. In judo, at least 3 weight categories are lost, kinda. So you need, and I repeat, you may need time to adjust to that. What does it mean? In this particular situation, it most probably will mean that your kid will not be actually even participating in official competition in the first year of under 17 age group, physically. And then you are in trouble because you have to deliver medals, you have to perform, you have to do this, you have to do that. It's a bit different, of course, in other sports. However, if not the weight categories, if not, you know, the physical size, but then still I'm bringing you back to the very first presentation, remember? Difference in kind of proficiency. The ones spend already 3 years in training, others spend 5 years in training. So training age is 2 or 3 years different. And the junior most, being 15, will have to perform against senior most in the group who are under 17. And now I will say, hi my psychological friends, now this is psychological, typically. This is physical, and this is experience-wise. So because of that, we actually suggested in this academy to introduce the immunity sort of protocol. And I will explain that later how it works. But what my point now is that we actually had to observe the transitions, and we have to specify when to perform and when not to perform. And using this approach, we actually need to create an immunity for the ones who are transiting from one age group to another. We have to give them more time to develop physically, strength and conditioning-wise, skill acquisition, skill perfection, and many other things. And we have to actually let them out of that hook of performing every single year. So this is the point which is most important. This is an example from boxing, for instance, Summer Youth Olympics. 52 is the minimum weight category, right? This is like US wrestling weight categories. See, they even have under 8. And then, of course, the weights are different. Under 10, 12, 14. And see, there will be categories every kind of next level, lost, chop. So you have to grow, you have to get heavier, and so on and so forth. Whereas, what are we facing in, for instance, talent identification procedures? We look at performance, which is not actually right. We'll discuss it later. We look at agility, we look at skills, and typically the smaller frame kids will be what? Faster, more agile, kind of more skillful. The bigger ones will be clumsy, slow, not that well coordinated. However, if you ask yourself, why didn't I pick that kid 3 years ago, the clumsy one? He would now be the kind of Asian level heavyweight. Whereas I'm now struggling in improving the light and small ones into a bit way heavier instead. So this is the logic, and this is actually the, I would say, assumption, which I would like, of course, you to also bear in mind, and I would like to hear your views and opinion on that. Now, we actually developed here and suggested a long-term development program based on this particular SGFI frame. Of course, you will be correct saying, look, National Association's frame line or timeline is different. So SGFI will be under 14, under 17, under 19, under 25, 1. Whereas nationals will be under 14, under 16, under 19, and under 20, right? So, however, the logic still remains. What is it? For instance, if this is the age when your athlete joined, being in under 14 group, let's say at the age of 12. 12, 13, 14. Now, what is that marking means? It's a critical year, right? Critical from the point of view of performance. The kid just joined, right? And that is itself is a kind of not a simple thing to adjust. Build up pre-peaking year, and then optimum to age performance and medal opportunity year is only once in whole that age category. Again, year 1 is critical, this is more like pre-peaking, and the peaking is just 1 year. So what we are trying to deliver a message to SAG, and that's now I'm sharing with you guys because we already shared that in our Nadiad Academy here. I want you to also think about it and express your views on that, that we are not supposed to deliver performance with those kids at year 1, year 2. The only one we have to deliver here when that kid is at the top of the food chain, if I may say so. Oldest, most experienced, most kind of adapted to this particular age category. However, what happens next is what I was just explaining to you in the examples of weight categories and the other stuff. The same kid in this year is turning 15 years of age. And again, he or she is the youngest, least experienced, smallest perhaps, size-wise, stature-wise, in the whole under 17 group. So you basically have to start afresh, particularly when the size changes and when the biological growth is there and the biological spur is there. They are becoming taller, they are becoming skinnier, they are becoming they are losing some way of strength, particularly in, not in absolute figures, but in relative figures, all right? So this is the time when we have to re-look at those years from the point of view what exactly we do in training there. And if we approve and agree that performance is not an objective in these 2 years, then you have to re-look into your training kind of objectives as such. Okay, no peaking, no performance. I'm not saying that they are not competing. Please, go ahead. Do sparring partners, exposure, this stuff and that stuff. For that very reason, we were also discussing a possibility as a policy matters in the SG that not only Group A athletes will be provided with competition and training exposure, not only Group B athletes will be provided with competition and training exposure, even Group C athletes who perhaps could be right about here with immunity, they will still be provided with a certain degree of exposure. Not much, and of course on the justification of you guys as coaches. However, if no performing is here and no performing is here, you can spend well better time and more time in conditioning, skills acquisition, techniques, tactics. If you are talking games like basketball, volleyball, improve your skills, improve your physique, improve your tactical proficiency, your technical proficiency. You do not need to bring a medal. Forget about it. Relax. You are protected by the system. So you will not be pushed hard to actually deliver. And then, what does it mean? It means that you will be actually eligible to deliver your medal once in 3 years, not every year. Instead, I repeat, spend more time creatively in training. Arrange some competitions, something, whatever, but you will be kind of offloaded of that, burden, sorry to say that, medal winning. No. So, one first peak is when you are 14, next peak when you are 17. That's a much more manageable system, isn't it? And it actually opens your mind towards improving in training. It opens your actually freedoms to do what you have to do without delivering. That's why we call it immunity system. So then, the next one, under 19. The kind of window is narrowing though, 2 years now, right? So, you were still best at under 17, right? When you are 18 and then you are 19. So you are performing not next year, next to next. No, you can, if you have some genius athlete and he or she keeps beating everything out of everyone, fine, let it be. But still, there is a kind of, a mechanism that will ensure that if the athlete is not delivering every year, it's normal, it's logic. Because remember, even if we look at that Canadian model, we are still climbing, right? We are not yet reached the maintenance of performance. We are in progress. And that in progress is bringing us to the point when we can say, okay, this is that sub-elite level, which is yet to be kind of considered as elite. which is yet to be considered as like end of the road. It's not supposed to be, but it is something when you are kind of delivering your national medals, right? And if that works fine, you are actually getting that later at the under 29 category with about another year, which can be used differently and used as a build-up to perform. And then eventually, if everything goes fine, and then the athletes are not lost to job opportunities or to injuries or to something, which, of course, this is also about avoiding injuries. It is also about a build-up. It's also about actually protection and so on and so forth. So this way we are restructuring the whole long-term athlete development system according to our needs and according to the needs of delivering performance once, twice, like about 4 times before hitting the elite level. So this will be, in a way, kind of world-class performance. But with the difference that, yes, we are not just moving somehow only to achieve the performance here. We do deliver at 14, we do deliver at 17, 19, 21, and then comfortably through to elite performance. So that is how the ground reality may look like in case you are actually agreeing with what I'm saying, and that is how the whole thing can exist in a way like multiple deliveries of performance. Not just somewhere, like I was saying, God knows when, where, who, if someone's still there. So that is the idea. And of course, we've developed that kind of description of that immunity system. If time permits, I will share it with you on the screen, and or maybe then we will also have it somehow distributed, or maybe whatever other way. However, still the question comes, and you will be right to ask me a question. Okay, that sounds logic. What do we do? How do we actually go about it? And how we actually plan those training objectives in relation to that particular system. All right, I specifically put it that way, adjusted objectives of training. Because with all due respect to that Canadian association and that longitudinal thing and long-term athlete development, I shared that with you. I have my doubts, honestly speaking. And theory is not being kind of fully fitting with the realities of life. If we take what I was talking about in the previous slide as a reality of life, then we need adjusted objectives, which are, for instance, adjustment to school and academy, right? So the one which was branded as critical year, right? Someone, a newcomer, in. Adjustment to school academy, skills and basic physique, observing growth and developmental, adjusting training impact to natural development. We are still existing within a natural development of a kid, isn't it? Again, our nutritionist recently noticed a fella from judo who is now in Sanskardam and said, "Ooh, he grows so tall now." The guy was that much, right? That then he was a kind of youth and a kind of different fella now. Then obviously, see, we don't just watch them growing. We have to adjust the training loads accordingly to that. And now, for instance, like 2 years ago when he was like pre-COVID, I think you were having issues with him, making him heavier. You will not, and there was a big problem because he was short back then. Now, he's like, what, 30 centimeters taller. There's no issue now. You can put anything at him, provided he's well fed. Right? So, nutrition, training, adjustment, free hand. And put at top of it that he does not need to deliver. Remember? Fine. Do the job. Create a machine which exists and works under any circumstances. Do not push him into performance when he is not good enough for that age category. Use time wisely, differently, create different advantages. So then, first productive year in the academy, specific skill-based and regular strength and conditioning. We keep having misunderstandings of various levels with coaches, with strength and conditioning trainers here, elsewhere, it doesn't matter. Please work together. You are here to help each other. You will all have some knowledge of strength and conditioning. Our strength and conditioning trainers will have some knowledge of your sport, but you can do much better job together. Yes, you know specific conditioning, no doubts, much better than anyone else, but we can still be of use with our strength training, with strength and conditioning trainers, to provide with a very necessary adjustments and training objectives. Build up for the performance in the current age group. No current year, current age group. That makes a whole lot of differences, isn't it? So, rehabilitation and injury prevention. All right, I know that you guys are therapists from away. Where are Nadia therapists? Guys, I don't see you. Aha, okay, sorry. I saw you. My fault. All right. So, prehab and injury prevention is critical. This is where, and this is why we keep, again, insisting and reiterating that at your own level, with your own great knowledge, please communicate to each other. This is critical. We have to adjust injury prevention, strength and conditioning, everything together, particularly in those years when we are building up. And performance is not a burden and not an axe hanging at your head like if you don't deliver a medal, you're in trouble. No, no issue, relax. Do something else. Then, first picking for the top age group performance, if that is year 1, year 2, year 3. First picking for top performance age group like under 14. Specific skills and specific fitness. Increase sparring partners, workout training and competitions exposure, improving on psychological toughness. Yes, psychological toughness is important, of course. So, that's how gradually from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, you're building up on adjusted objectives of training. So, you kind of get yourself to, not to say quiet years, it's never quiet, it's never simple, never easy, but at least 2 years when you can realistically build up and shoot at the age of 14, just for the first time. Okay, you may disagree with me and say, okay, about under 12 is still there, but then again we'll have to somehow distinguish. Let's do it now. We have DLSS coaches here, right? Please raise your hands. How many of you? DLSS. Okay, a lot. All right, academy coaches like Nadia and other academies? Okay. The ones who did not raise hands neither for first nor for the second, what are you? Huh? What's the way? We have DLSS coaches, we have academy coaches. What else we have? Huh? District Coach Sporting Center. Okay. And DSC, they are sitting between DLSS and academies? Oh. DLSS, districts, and then academies. Okay, we have all three. Good. All right. So, that means that DLSS and then District Sports Coaching Center will perhaps take care of the younger groups, right, under 12, and then perhaps the others. All right. So, now, the next one, under 17. So, imagine, okay, I was intentionally not giving any name to those stages or phases because that's the idea was actually struck my mind somewhere before COVID, and then the whole kind of contents thing is still actually adjustable. So that is one of other reasons which I want your feedback. So please, tomorrow morning you will have to say something. I'll be happy to hear something about that system and about that model. Is that something which you would use, or that will remain another theory, which I don't like to happen actually. So, under 17, the next age category or next group, what about it? Progressing in age and becoming or being demoted, okay, this is the first year. So when I was saying that someone of the age of 15 is getting into higher age group, right? Demoted in a way that you are from being the greatest and the oldest being 14, you are suddenly the junior most. And there are 16 years of age and 17 years of age, you are the youngest. That's why I use the word demoted. Right? To the junior most in the new age group. Psychological discomfort related to the juniority factors. There will be. Definitely. Some will not face it, some may not, but there will be. Now, need to adjust to the heavier weight categories, the one which I was sharing in the previous slide. Need to reduce competition exposure. More of sparrings, nutrition, supplementation is a critical factor. So, that junior most year, as again, as I keep saying, you need to spend it wisely, observing other objectives rather than peaking, rather than performing. Do more sparrings, do more kind of internal exposures, whatever. But do not really think and compete seriously. Stabilizing next year. Stabilizing in the weight category, getting psychological comfort, adjusting to new strength and conditioning demands. I repeat, new strength and conditioning demands. Bigger bodies, natural development requires more training. That is quite often more of SNC required, more of specific conditioning required, particularly, as I said, aquatics, that is realistically a big trouble. The smaller kids, swimming nice, they're getting taller, they're getting bigger, and they slow down. They go, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? I'm getting bigger, the bigger thing, swims slower. So you need to turn that bigger thing into a more fit and more kind of skillful individual. That's what and how the performance is improving. Then, a lot improving in strength and conditioning and specific fitness. Building up to the next level of performance, including supplements, moorings, partners, and exposures. I will talk more about supplements tomorrow. We have a specifically dedicated slots for under 14 issues, under 17 issues, under 19 and 21. We'll discuss it later. Tomorrow, in detail. Last year of this particular group, second peaking for the top age group performance. Meaning, you performed at 14, you do not need to perform at 15, you do not need to perform at 16, you perform, please, 17. What? Specific skills, specific fitness, increased training and competition exposure, building up on psychological toughness and developing superiority complex and mental toughness. When you are junior most in the age group, that's what I say, it's kind of typically juniority. Sometimes inferiority, which we don't want actually to happen, but it is inevitable, it happens. So when you're getting older and senior most in that age group, then you are becoming kind of, again, at the top of the food chain, and that's a good time to develop actually superiority complex. Okay, I am the strongest, that's it. Everyone else is junior, then I have to deliver, and I will. So that is under 17. Moving on into the next, under 19 age group. Now, no more stretches of 3 years, right? 14, 17, now it's 17 to 19. And then only 1 year gap in between. And then, of course, under 17 athletes are already kind of into a serious training. And again, if we start comparing this to that Canadian model, I think back there at 17, they were still like thinking how to compete or whatever. We are not thinking how to compete. We are winning now, right? So, only 1 year available to readjust to the older age group. And although psychologically and physically tough, has to combine both developmental and build-up issues. Possible progression in the weight category, lot more both general and specific conditioning, fully periodized training, domestic exposure, and so on and so forth. See, there is an existent, I would say, misconception, and it has been developed for years together, stating that the older the athletes are, the less is the role of basic strength and conditioning, and the more is the role of specific strength and conditioning. Theoretically, it may be looking that way. However, I will give you a few numbers and few examples that although we keep saying that the training becomes more specific, but we still have to look at kind of general conditioning. And for instance, imagine if you are doing 1,000 hours a year of training. We were discussing that before. In that 1,000 hours, you will have, for instance, 40% or 30% of general conditioning and 70% of specific. No, scrap it. Among other factors, because 1,000 is for everything, right? Including technical, including tactical, including skills, whatever. Now, all right, new numbers. 20% of time, for instance, for general conditioning and say 40% of time for specific out of total time. So you get 200 hours of general conditioning and say 400 hours of specific conditioning, right? Now, move down to 600 hours. This was 1,000. Move down to 600 hours, increase the role of general conditioning to 30, and specific will be also 30, for instance, in percentage. Out of 600, 30% will be how much? About 200 something. All right? 200 something and 200 something. Equal. In 1,000, the role of general conditioning, although less percentage, but more in hours. That's what the point is. 200 something, 200 something both. Remind you, in 1,000 hours arithmetics, it was what? 20 and 30, right? Or 200 and 300. So percentage goes down, but the absolute number is still the same. That's what we are neglecting quite often. Saying, okay, general goes down. Yes, percentage goes down, but absolute number is still the same. So we still have to pay attention to that, including specific conditioning as well. And the question will be why we are not doing specific conditioning in sports specific? Because you people don't have equipment. And then you don't have equipment, you don't do specific conditioning, you tend to run back to the gym to do general conditioning, which is not right. You have to do it specific. So that is actually kind of becoming one of the issues. Supplementations are the stuff we are discussing later. Reaching about 90% of individual genetically determined potential with the help of advanced training methods, nutrition, physiotherapy, sports sciences, and so on. And hopefully, stable weight categories, particularly in weight categorized sport, and fully developed basic conditioning status. All right? Joining national camps, provided we are not losing our athletes to job opportunities. Because if we do, then in a way your time is wasted and the others people's time is also wasted. But unfortunately we cannot stop it. We can, however, still discuss and talk about actually kind of making it different. All right, so we are working with sport authorities, requesting them to, offer some scholarships, some stipends or something like that to actually prevent our sub-elite end, because this is still sub-elite level, all right? Performers not to quit, not to leave, and unfortunately I cannot say that we are successful in that, but we are trying. All right, our last, I keep reminding that issue, our judo player who was like one victory away from direct qualification to Olympics. Next thing we know, he got a job offer gladly accepting out. Man, you were just one fight away from the glory to yourself, to your state, to your country. Now you're happily employed. Where is he now? Yeah. All right. And I'm unfortunately, I'm sure he is not in high performance training anymore, right? Otherwise, that would be another good picture on Nodiad Academy hallway, right? And in a way, it will be the first ever direct Olympic qualification to, okay, forget it. I'm getting upset. Okay, so what happens next? The next is under 21. We're still climbing, all right? And those are the list of the objectives which you can take care of, again, during those adjusted years, and again, only 1 year gap from peaking to peaking. See, why I keep reiterating on that. Tomorrow, after lunch, we will be, I will have to, it's not that I like it doing it, I have to refresh a bit of your knowledge of periodization to actually see the participation strategy, how to place all those performance competitions and other stuffs and peaking. See, it's a huge relief when you don't really need to peak every year. You know that. You can just relax your mind and say, okay, I'm not picking for this, I'm not picking for that. I can do something which I've never did before. Take it that way. I'm sure if you start looking at your training programs and something, you will still have a kind of dozen of issues or dozen of items which you think you could have done, but you didn't do for whatever reason. So these are actually the kind of perfect opportunity to do something which has been actually delayed or not done for whatever reason. So, again, only 1 year available to readjust to the older age group, and although physically tough, has to combine both developmental and build-up issues. Assume stabilization of the weight categories, a lot more specific conditioning. Again, fully periodized training, international exposure, with a lot of competition exposure, full nutritional supplemental support. We will again discuss that tomorrow morning, like before lunch, that we will have to play with training exposure, competition exposure, weaker opposition, stronger opposition. There's a lot of things to actually think about. But it is to be somehow done. And by the way, for those of you who are representing weight categorized sport, please remember, and that is also the part of our immunity system, that you are officially sort of eligible for keeping a larger number of athletes, even if they are not exactly performing for a reason, because you need more different kinds of sparring partners. You need taller, you need shorter, you need bigger, you need kind of traditional, you need orthodox, you need southpaw. Please use that for your own benefits. If someone is kind of in trouble one way or another, you can always convince higher authorities that you need a bit larger strength because sparring partners are essential. And you cannot invite them from outside, and not many people will come in to become punching bags. You have to have your own. So please remember that. All right. Reaching about 95% of individual genetically determined potential. That is a little bit tricky. Say, when Canadians were thinking of achieving that 95% of genetic determination at about 23 plus, we have to do it earlier. Our reality is different from their reality, okay? So we have to a little bit do it faster, but still we are on a reasonably fast track, all right? We will discuss every detail of that tomorrow before lunch, because this is also kind of tricky. And that is why people say, oh, overloading, oh, overreaching, burnout. Burnout is 60% myth and only 40% reality. Most of the people who we consider or other people consider burned out, they're just losing interest and they're undertrained. They stop performing, they quit. There is no burnout. There is underloaded, potentially talented athletes. And because they are, either because of education or because of any other things, they just quit. You did nothing wrong. Burnout is when someone is like, quitting because of overload or overreaching and some other reasons, which typically is not happening. Okay, stable weight category, fully developed basic conditioning status, specific improvements, overseas training and exposure. That is what is important. I know you perhaps are also smiling again and saying, ha 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 ha, who will give us foreign exposure? We tried so many times, never happening. We will try again to push it and to try to get it done so that you will possibly have it. Right, the last one, under 23. And we'll perhaps close it after that. Reaching 100% of an individual genetically determined potential with the help of advanced training methods, nutrition, physiotherapy, and sports sciences. You are doing your great job. Scientists are trying to assist you in every possible way so that you get whatever support you require. And of course, trying to maintain that elite status and performance as suggested by every model that, okay, you've achieved somewhere, and then you take a ride and enjoy the ride. Hopefully it happens. It is not always that simple. Interestingly, when you reach the plateau, you don't need to increase the training loads any longer. It's kind of, you're reaching the genetically determined potential, so you don't push any further. You just maintain. And typically the loads, the volumes, the other stuff will be actually even decreasing a bit. There'll be no more like 1,300, 1,400, 1,500 hours a year. No, it's not happening. It's very rarely crossing 1,200 per year. When it is maintenance, it's either than that, it's less than that. It becomes kind of more specific. It does not require realistically tough general part of training, conditioning. It's kind of becoming specific, and that's why kind of picking issues are kind of treated differently. Provided, again, that our elite athletes are still with us, and we can actually continue whatever we have to. So, realistically speaking, we are coming to that point that, okay, either we treat our athletes the way international models are suggesting, or we realistically stick to something more kind of ground related, and we adjust what we do according to that. If that is the case, then we have to answer that question. Either we go linearly, so to say, and then to top performance to be achieved at optimum age, right? Or we go spirally, as I was explaining to you. Now we go as a spiral, which is non-linear. However, we're still targeting top performance repeatedly at various age groups. Again, 14, 17, 19, 21. So we do not hit the peak every single year. We do it just when we need it and when we are capable of doing that. Thanks again for sticking together. All right. And one more or less half done. So just tomorrow another day to go. Right, so thank you again for being around and for paying attention. But please, tonight, think about it. I will start or try to push you tomorrow morning to hear some feedback from you before we go any further. Otherwise, I have to know at least something right, something wrong, and I'll be happy to hear from you as from actual people who deliver the performance, right? Okay, thank you. I guess no more tea straight into the dinner time, right? Okay guys, see you tomorrow.